Even though I was so young when I started, because we're a youth led organization, we are inherently experts of how this issue impacts us. Activism was really like a religion growing up in my house. Word of mouth is huge for us. Our organization was founded off the backs of telling a story.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unified Purpose, the podcast where we share inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Aela Mansmann from the organization SafeBAE. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me today again. And could you just start by introducing yourself? Maybe you'll do it a little differently than I would, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do in this organization.
Sure. Yeah. So, my name, as you said, is Aela Mansmann. I am a junior at Manhattanville University. And I am the director of programs and outreach at SafeBAE. I have been working with this organization for almost 7 years now. So quite a bit of time. I got involved, I want to say, in middle school, towards the end of middle school. And yeah, it's an organization very near and dear to my heart. We work to end sexual violence among teens. And I think one of my favorite parts is that, even though we're a national organization, I think we have so many beautiful pockets of communities all over the country. And yeah, that's a pretty special place to work.
It definitely sounds like it is. It's well, so it's very interesting, and maybe this might be a personal question. I don't know if it is. How did you find out about the organization so young?
Yeah, so the founding executive director is actually my mom.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
yeah, yeah. So Shale is my mom. And so I kind of, just saw what she was doing and uh r- activism was really like a religion growing up in my house. I'm actually, funny enough, wearing an old shirt from she was on the founding staff of V-Day. This is an old shirt from that organization. Yeah. So I grew up, really looking up to all of the people that she worked with and the work that she did and saw what it meant to dedicate your time to a cause that helps people all over the world. And as she was co-founding SafeBay with the youth co-founders who are the subjects of the Netflix documentary Audrey and Daisy, when I started to meet all of the co-founders, I think it kind of sunk in that anyone at any age can make an impact. And, as all teenagers do, we tend to try to gravitate towards something that helps us belong somewhere. And I feel fortunate enough that mine was something that was actually sustainable, you know, was something that I could really progress in and be really creative in. And even though I was so young when I started, because we're a youth led organization, you know, as young people, we are inherently experts of how this issue impacts us. And being able to lean into that power at such a young age was really empowering. So I feel so fortunate that I've been able to now kind of pass the torch on to the new young generation.
Yeah, it's really incredible to also have that experience as a younger person. You're still young. Okay. And be able to um you can navigate that with the new younger people and the generation because you've been a part of it at that age as well. You know how to interact with it or how you did and maybe how they might. So it's really nice to be able to work with them and have that perspective, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, of course, our experiences, even just in the little bit of time since I've been in high school, uh, those experiences definitely change. Uh, as generations get older and there's always something new out there. Uh, but I think it's really impactful. So much of our work is based on a peer-to-peer level. And I think we learned very quickly that that peer-to-peer education model is truly so impactful and allows us to connect with young people, in a really unique and authentic way. I think one thing that makes us really special is that 2/3 of our board, are youth. And so our primary decision makers, the people that build the trajectory and the strategy for the future of our organization, they are young people. And they are always leading the charge. And, I say them, but, I am fortunate enough to still be involved in that. um, but yeah, they are constantly envisioning and identifying gaps that need to be filled in this work. And new areas of advocacy that are really needed. And then we work with young people to then design that thing that's going to fill the gap, whether it's a new training or a video or a social media campaign, whatever it may be. We not only fuel ideas from young people, but we also uplift them to then generate the solutions of the ideas that they have.
I think it's incredible to have a youth-led organization specifically for something that affects youth. I I think that especially for sensitive topics, it is very unlikely to breach that barrier when an adult is explaining it, to a certain group. I definitely remember being in middle school and having I don't think I've been fortunate enough to have discussions on this specifically, but for sensitive topics like that in which we talked about in health class, I think that it wasn't something that was very taken seriously, and I think that and that's unfortunate, but I think that is a testament to the idea that students or a lot of youth don't like to be told things from a age gapped perspective, I guess. So it's really nice to have that strategy, not only because I think that it's more likely to get through to that age group, but also that they, like you said, have the ability to fill in the gaps that maybe are not working or that aren't as effective.
Mm. Yeah, well, the messenger is just as important as the message,
Mhm.
right? And there's always a language barrier just in terms of, phrases and what people are calling things nowadays, even to the point that I'm removed from that. I've only been out of high school for 3 years, and I don't understand half of what's going on. But making sure that we are kind of fluent in that younger generation and how they speak to each other, and making sure that our materials reflect that makes the prevention education that we do that much more approachable and, comprehensive.
What are some strategies that you have for empowering and supporting students in these kind of leadership roles? Because I know that it must be difficult, especially I assume that a lot of people getting involved in this organization may have experience or things that have affected them that make them more open to advocating for this topic. And I think that I know that it's very difficult for people to stand up for themselves at a young age, but also be able to stand up for other people experiencing things or have experienced things similar to them, especially things as sensitive as this. So how do you guys um interact and support these individuals that are young and a part of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think support takes many shapes and sizes. I don't think there's necessarily a one size fits all. I think we do our best to try to meet young people where they're at, regardless of where that is. Everyone has a different scope and range of experiences as well as prior education that they may have received, as well as, potentially stigmas that they've encountered throughout their lives as well. And so, we have a number of youth programs. And first and foremost, we make sure that all of our youth programs and materials are free to young people. And this is so important because that makes it accessible. It shouldn't be people that can afford these materials those shouldn't be the only people that actually have access to prevention education.
Agreed.
So in order to make our materials accessible and equitable to everyone, they have to be free. And while that can definitely pose as a difficulty in terms of different forms of revenue streams for a nonprofit,
Mm.
sure, that's a challenge, but that's a challenge that is worth taking on in order to make sure that everyone who wants prevention education can have it. Uh, yeah, and then in terms of, like, the day-to-day support that we do, we have a number of different programming staffers from all over the country, and I believe I'm the oldest of all of them, and I'm only 20. So we try to reflect the audience that we serve in the young people that we work with, and yeah, just constantly uplifting leadership, and we make sure that you know, as young people are leaning into advocacy and activism, we understand that there's a number of different walls and barriers in terms of adversity that they may face. We make sure that our materials and our support isn't one of them.
I think that's definitely really nice, and the free aspect of it, I think, is really important. Um, on the other end of the coin, how are you guys able to market yourselves, so to speak? Like, be able to make it known that these are programs that exist for people? Because I think that when I was younger, I would be very thankful to know about something like this. And I don't know how I don't know if it's only existed for the 7 years that you've been a part of it or not, but I didn't know about something like this when I was younger, and, um, I would always wonder, I guess, how younger people now would be able to find out about this and, for it to be helpful to them.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is a constant struggle. So
It's for nonprofits all alike, I completely.
yeah, so we have had to get really creative over the years. We do have people, we have a couple people that work on social media and media marketing in general, content creation, all that good stuff. But we have never really had the opportunity to launch a new program with a built-in marketing budget. So we've had to develop that ourselves and create whether it's, creating graphics for some sort of social media campaign or partnering with the young person that designed that newest material to tell the story of why that material is a necessity. And yeah, so it's really organic marketing, truly. Uh, and then sometimes we'll receive grants that allow us to deliver our program. So, specifically, right now, we have a grant based in New York City that allows us to deliver our peer educator training, allow us to offer it to New York students, New York City students for free. And the grant allows us to actually market it in a way that we've never really had the opportunity to do before. So, a lot of our marketing for that program looks like connecting with schools and booking as many school visits as possible so we can deliver some sort of in person presentation that gives them a snapshot of that online certification training. And then we do the best we can to encourage them to register for that training so they can explore the rest of the materials themselves.
I it it's so disheartening to know that there's not a lot of I know I see it constantly with, nonprofits, that there's not a lot of money towards marketing because it's not seen as something that's necessary, but I think it so much is not only for the, and not necessary to the people amongst their own nonprofits, if anything, they know the most, of that it's necessary and helpful for the population in which they serve. But I hope that in the future, getting grants for things like that to be able to promote an organization is much easier. So it's nice to know that you have received one in which incorporates that as part of the funding.
Yeah, I think the, word of mouth is huge for us, right? So, we are our organization was founded off the backs of telling a story. That's we have that whole the documentary, Audrey and Daisy, you know? So, uh, we utilize storytelling to the best of our ability to engage audiences, and then constantly trying to not reinvent ourselves, but reposition ourselves to, continue to be as relevant and engaging as we can. So during COVID, we really tried to, in an effort to diversify our income, we developed a clothing line called Ask First. And this clothing line has really been instrumental in helping us uh, remain relevant. It is kind of primarily the clothing line sells underwear and boxers and bras. We also have t-shirts and all those other things too. But the initial launch, with it being underwear and boxers, allowed us to kind of come into the conversation with an edgy, sex positive, consent positive narrative that has done really well on social media. And yeah, so I think young people will see that. They'll see, like, oh, all of the profits from this clothing line goes to this organization. What does that mean? What does this organization do? There's a lot of uh bilateral recognition in terms of that brand association, uh, that has really helped us engage new audiences of people.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible marketing stunt. I think that marketing stunt has maybe not a great connotation around it, but I do think that that could have been a risk for you guys, especially you have to, I'm assuming, put money into it in order to create those. But to for it to not only be something that's popular and something that incorporates a very important concept of consent, but then also leads back to your organization in which people are researching it or looking it up to find out more about that clothing line. I think that's an incredibly smart strategy. That I hope people watching this or nonprofits watching this are inspired by that specific technique because I think that's very unique and also helpful in you being able to have publicity and in very organic, authentic publicity, especially during a time where it was very difficult for any business to be successful in promoting themselves and maintaining a stable income.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what do you think are some of the biggest um, difficulties in integrating certain programs into schools? Because I know that, I there's a couple of them that would just immediately come to my mind that I would assume would be troublesome, but, how are you able to incorporate this, where there may be some pushback?
Yeah, I mean, I think the demand for our work has really skyrocketed in the last couple years. When we first began, it really was incredibly difficult to get in any door. And now we have schools reaching out to us asking when we're available to come and what it would look like to coordinate a school partnership, etc. I think with time, we were able to expand our resources, which has allowed for there to be a more diverse range of things that people could ask for, and needs that we can fill, depending on what a school is looking for. But yeah, of course, there are still barriers in terms of getting into all schools. Funding is huge. Like I said, the demand is at an all-time high, but the funding has not quite matched that. There isn't yeah, so despite this seeming like a relatively broad topic, that we work with, the actual criteria of funding that we fall into is incredibly niche. specifically because we work with young people or because we are a national organization and not a statewide organization. Or, there's so many other things too. Um, but those small things kind of filter us out of some of the larger grants that we could be eligible for. And so that's made it really difficult to be able to expand our resources and also expand our reach, without it requiring schools coming to us first. And then, of course, there's the cultural barrier too of uh, a lot of the people in schools that are the decision makers to agree for us to come into their school or for them to invite us into their school. Maybe they're not as comfortable as having this type of conversation. So oftentimes we find schools that are the most eager to bring us to them are schools that are potentially reacting to a situation that maybe occurred in their district. It really is on a case by case basis, but yeah, I mean, there's a number of barriers, but I think those are probably uh, the biggest of the two.
I definitely can see that knowing how my school district was growing up. I well, I actually so I guess more of a specific question on that topic. How do you effectively talk to kids about these sensitive issues without scaring them, quote unquote? Because I know that a big, I guess, concern that adults have, which I think is a little outdated, a little misguided, is oh, like, if this isn't happening to kids, they shouldn't know it's happening, quote, unquote, but then, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of kids have no education on this idea, and then it ends up happening to them down the line or whatever, so to speak, and, they don't have these facilities to go to or it happens because of lack of education, whatever it may be. I'd love to know how you kind of talk about this while also appeasing, certain concerns maybe from adults or even children, that don't know, um, how to deal with these types of concepts.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely shift our language depending on the age range of the group that we're talking with. So, you know, anyone at any age can learn about consent. We can be teaching in elementary schools and talking about consent, and it's in a very uh it's not in the context of sex or anything like that. Consent at that age is, you know, "Can I have a high five?" or "Can I borrow your scooter?" or,
Mhm.
"Do you wanna have a play date?" It's all about permission. It's all about boundaries, agreement. Um, we yeah, so some version of this conversation is relevant for any age range. And then I tend to believe that if a student is old enough to ask the question, they're old enough to hear some version of the answer,
Mhm.
right? So I think phones and social media has any illusion that a student or or a child doesn't have any exposure to negative or toxic messages. I think social media and phones kind of erase the legitimacy of that illusion.
Agreed.
Uh, yeah, I don't think I can make a pretty safe bet, I think, and that I have never spoken to a student who just looked at me with a blank face like I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe in the beginning they're like, "Oh, well, what do you mean by healthy relationships?" But then once we're talking about it, they're like, "Oh, that's what that is," Or we start to talk about, like, red flags and green flags, and they start to identify things in their lives, and they get to now with a toolkit of information and how to dissect the information that they're receiving, whether it's online or from friends or partners, etcetera. They now get to identify what may be healthy or what's not as healthy, and set that boundary for themselves. So, yeah, I think if I'm trying to think, like, back to your original question of, what do we say? I think it really depends on the environment that we're in and what context we're walking into. But pretty much most of the time, we can find some common ground with the students that we're, presenting to, and kind of jump off from there. Whether it's like a student shouting out the name of a celebrity that's had a recent case come up, and they're all kind of tuned in to the recent allegations, and all these students have opinions of the potential legitimacy of those allegations. And now we can actually meet them where they're at and give them the tools to dissect the information, recognize the stats of false reporting and how it happens incredibly rarely, and make more informed decisions and informed actions in their own lives moving forward.
Yeah, I it's well, one, it's really nice to hear um because I think that language is incredibly important for children especially. But I'm happy that you have a way to incorporate this early on that is sensitive to the age group, because I think that these conversations are important to start earlier. I think it's just difficult for to navigate around for parents and staff's approval and their opinions on how things should be spoken about, or spoken about at all. Unfortunately, I think there is like a stigma around having these conversations, regardless of how generic they may be for a younger group. And I hope that that changes. Um, but it's nice to hear that conversations of consent are still implemented for a younger age, because that's important regardless of whether it's around sex or just a general, conversation, or, boundaries are always important, and to teach kids that from a young age is very important. So I'm happy that to hear that that's something that you incorporate in your model.
Yeah, of course. And I think too, adding to that a little bit, I think one way to ease concerns of parents is to give them tools as well, and say, here, being really transparent with anything that we've discussed in their child's classroom, and then giving them materials in terms of how they can continue that conversation at home, and how to approach the subject in a way that will bridge this gap of communication, that will allow for a more trustful and transparent relationship between that child and parent. And I think si- walking into a room, like when my mom, our executive director, and I walk into a room, there have been many times where parents have pulled us aside and said, "How did you do that? Like, how do you guys talk so fluidly with each other? How did you initiate those conversations?" Because it didn't just happen one day. And there's this illusion of one day you're gonna sit down with your child and you're gonna have the talk, and it's gonna be awkward, but now your child's gonna at least, know what to do whether it's puberty or periods or whatever. And we always say, it's not a talk. It's a conversation. It's a conversation that happens over years, decades. It's a conversation that doesn't happen in a dark, quiet room. It's a conversation that happens out in the open to reduce that stigma. A conversation that, sure, it may be awkward at moments, but that's okay. And you can lean into that awkwardness and overcome that. And your child and your relationship with your child will be so much better off for it. And in the event your child does experience something, or they know someone that experiences something, because that conversation and that bridge of communication has been built, your child will feel that much more comfortable to come to you in those instances. And ultimately, no matter how nervous a parent is about us coming to talk to their kids, or how many hesitations they have. Bottom line, m pretty much all of them are looking for that same thing of, if my child needed me, they would come to me, and that's all we're trying to help parents achieve.
Yeah, it's really nice for you to work with the parents on that level as well, because I think that another fear that they may have or have seen in the past is that, they don't want someone else to parent their child or be able to talk to their children about sensitive topics because they wanna be able to do it in their own way or whatever, but for you to be able to educate them maybe lightly on something from an early age and then give the parents the tools to continue those conversations, I think would make them much less wary about, you coming in to do that because it's not just something that ends there, and it's also a conversation that they feel included on, where I think that if that wasn't the case, especially I having a very average to below average health, uh, education, growing up, I think that when health education just stops in a school, whether you're even having it, is not a good thing. I think that it should continue in the home, and I think that many kids, even if the conversation is a conversation in schools, I don't think many kids are very comfortable with going to a teacher about something that's bothering them, especially a sensitive topic like anything sexually related. And I think that if you can start that conversation at home and diminish that stigma around having those conversations, I think that that's much more likely of a place for a child to be comfortable in talking about those things.
Sure.
So it's really nice that you guys are able to incorporate that, as well. Um, so thank you for I think that that's something that personally, I've seen, has not been incorporated in schools as much as I'd like to see it, and, it's very nice to know that you guys have this, goal.
Yeah.
Do you have before we go, because I know we're, like, a little, pressed for time, but I really wanted to ask this, do you have any plans for, any push for schools that aren't as open to having you? I know that there's a bunch of policy that might, interrupt, your guys' ability and what you can do, but, is there anything that you think or maybe rather, maybe this is a more positive note, is there any things that you provide to students that maybe don't have access to this, and unfortunately, there's barriers in which you're able to access those students?
Yeah, I mean, one of our programs, one of our youth programs is called the Peer Educator Training. And like I said, it's free to students and it's an online training. There's 16 modules. So they register and they receive access to the modules, and there's knowledge checks between each module. And at the end, students receive a certificate. And I mean, not only is it a great resume booster, and we always say add it to LinkedIn and feature it on your college application, etc. But that's a really great way to be able to access this education and this information that isn't solely reliant on someone delivering it to you, whether it's your school inviting us to come present it to you or your school purchasing our curriculum so it can be taught to you by a health teacher. This allows students to take that initiative themselves and fill the gaps of their own education how they see fit. And of course, getting that to students that may not know about it is always a challenge. But like I said, word of mouth and ongoing marketing to the best of our ability will hopefully reach as many people as we possibly can. But that is really one of our primary ways that it allows us to provide education and access to materials in a way that doesn't require uh a series of approvals from a number of people or cohorts that may be less than willing to invite us to their school or institution.
Mhm. Oh, I really appreciate you having a method in a way to crack open the population that may not have access to you or know about you. It's nice and reassuring to know that this is still accessible to those kids that may not have the what's the word I'm looking for? Resources, or not know that they do. So it's really lovely to know that that's a part of um your foundation. And in I think that it's definitely a privilege to have this incorporated into your education, and there's so many kids that go through things that don't have even the words to explain them. So thank you so much for, being part of such a lovely cause and, caring about, an issue like this.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening. I really hope that you not only learn from this or but are able to participate in SafeBAE specifically. I think that this is a wonderful cause that everyone should support and be a part of and be educated on. And I know that I would have appreciated having this as a part of my education growing up. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
have a good day, everyone.